Hey guys, welcome back to Her Revision Podcast, a podcast for women who are rewriting the stories that they tell themselves and that the world tells them. And today we're going to talk about something that I've been sitting with a little bit lately. I sit with a lot, but specifically this: am I content or am I just comfortable? Am I trusting what God can really do in my life and will do in my life, or am I subtly, just without even realizing it, putting limits on what I feel like he's capable of and what I feel like will happen? I want to be as transparent as possible because I feel like this episode is for me as much as it is for you. Recently, I've been sitting with questions on whether or not I'm actually content or if I'm just complacent. Like if I'm sitting in the act of contentment, or is it complacency? It's like I'm in a season where I feel like God is moving in my life. I can see the blessings. I'm so grateful for all of the blessings that I feel like God has done for me. But then there's this little voice in my head sometimes that tells me, like, don't get a little too crazy with your dreams. Don't do too much. Don't let your vision go too crazy. And I'm wondering, like, how many of you have actually been there with me, with what I'm feeling? Have you ever had all of these dreams and, visions of your life, and then when you start to really think about it, and it could be as wild as possible, when you start to think about it, you start to, like, downplay it a little bit, like, okay, don't get too crazy now. I find myself reaching the conclusion that I don't want to be too outlandish with what I asked God for. I don't want to ask him for too much, and I don't want to be quote unquote unrealistic with what I'm asking him for. But then lately I've been feeling like, Jazz, is that contentment or are you just being complacent? Am I trying to convince myself that being realistic with my vision, or not doing too much with what I'm asking God for, is me being wise? Or am I just fearful of stepping out into the unknown and knowing that God is really capable of doing anything and everything beyond what I could ever imagine? So today I want to talk about the difference between being content with where you are and knowing that God can do more for you and will, and being complacent with where you are and being fearful of stepping out into the unknown and receiving everything that you could ever imagine under the sun, because you're scared of asking for more or fearful of God not actually being able to give you specifically, your wildest dreams. I want to start by acknowledging something that I feel like is real for all of us. Contentment is beautiful. Contentment to me is being at peace with where I currently am, with what God has done for me thus far. It's me saying I trust God's plan in everything that he has unfolded for me. Now I'm very much grateful for, and everything that he will unfold in my life, I trust that it will happen the way it should. I wrote down a Bible verse that I thought related well to this episode, and it is Philippians 4:11 through 13. And it talked about how Paul learned to be content in any situation. And whether he was living in abundance or in need, his peace truly came from trusting in Jesus and in what he could do. And that's something I think that we all strive for. We all strive for that stillness and that peace, and knowing that no matter what's happening around us, no matter what our current situation looks like, God's got it covered. He has and knows exactly what he wants for us in our life. I want to read the verse verbatim though. So, hold on, Bible app, y'all. Okay, so Philippians 4:11 through 13 says, and this is the New Living Translation, y'all. Not that I was ever in need, for I have learned how to be content with whatever I have. I know how to live on almost nothing or with everything. I have learned the secret of living in every situation, whether it is with a full stomach or empty, with plenty or little, for I can do everything through Christ who gives me strength. That is the epitome of being at peace with what God has for me and in my life, despite my current situation, despite what it looks like, despite what it may feel like in this earthly realm, I know that God has my back. And it's knowing that anything that he wants for me will prosper. And I want to live in that peace. I want to be content in the season of my life by knowing that where I am right now is exactly where I'm supposed to be. But I also know that contentment does not mean complacency. It doesn't mean that I stop pushing. It doesn't mean that I stop dreaming, that I stop envisioning what my wildest dreams may look like for me. I have to keep working towards the bigger vision of what God has called me to do and called me to be. I've been learning that contentment is much more about trusting the process. It's being grateful for today while still realizing and trusting that God has more for me tomorrow. And although I'm realizing that, it is hard. It is hard, right? To really see what your physical may look like and still believe that better will always be waiting for you. That God is always going to do more. It's a hard thought, because you see, to look at the bigger picture can sometimes feel a little awkward. I don't know, to feel like, okay, I see my current situation and I'm grateful for all that God has done for me, but to think that I'm going to receive more, to think that he has, like, my wildest dreams may actually come true is crazy. It's a little crazy for you to put that thought in your head and carry that, right? And that's how easy it is for complacency to try to be a replacement for contentment. Because you stop yearning for more because you feel like you don't want to ask for too much. You don't want to push it. It's easy sometimes to mistake contentment for settling. Contentment is not settling. Complacency is settling. Complacency feels exactly like contentment does. How I know when it's complacency is you start to tell yourself small things that you don't even realize is you being complacent, is you operating from a complacent point of view or point of living. For example, you'll start to tell yourself, this is enough, or I should be grateful for what I have. Who am I to want more? Don't ask for too much. Like, now you're being greedy. You start to tell yourself, you start to trick your mind into believing that what you have is all that you deserve or all that you should ask for. Complacency starts to sound a lot like wisdom. You're being wise. This is a humble and mature approach when you start to feel like disappointment can be an option. Is when you stop dreaming big because what you have is what you fear you'll always, this is the only thing that you're going to get, right? I'm not going to lie. There's a part of me that feels nervous about dreaming too big. Like, I think about her revision. I think about me wanting I want this podcast to be nationally syndicated. I want to have a Times Square billboard one day. I want to be able to impact people's lives and change them for the better based off of the words that I speak when I get up on this mic. That's what I see for myself. That's my vision. I want it to reach the masses. I want to have speaking engagements and be put on platforms that can really inspire. I want to create a platform that can really inspire and urge women to rewrite whatever narrative they have created for themselves or that others have created for them. This is your life and you only got one of them. And you are able to do bigger and better than you ever would have dreamed. I want this podcast to embody contentment with the promise of better and greater under God's vision for you, under his words that he spoke over your life. I want all of that for her revision podcast. But I can't lie and say that almost immediately when I think that bigger vision and that big picture, that I don't also in the back of my mind be like, all right, that's a little crazy, Jazz. That's a little crazy. We talking about national syndication. Globally even, if you will. That's a little wild. Like, okay, let's be a little realistic. Maybe you get a couple thousand plays. Maybe it just reaches a few states. Like that could work too, Jazz. That's just as influential. That's just as good. Like, that's okay. That's enough. My mind will start to tell me to be realistic. And I wonder, like, have you ever felt that way where you're stuck between having to pull yourself from the thought process that God can do exactly what my wildest dreams are and my vision for my purpose, or having to pull yourself on the other side where you're like, let's stick to a more reasonable option. Let's stick to a more reasonable vision out of fear. Because it is a scary thought to think that you are the one that God would give your wildest vision and the wildest dreams to. That it's fear involved with that. And to me, that is complacency covering itself under the guise of realistic visioning, of being realistic with your vision, of being humble or having a mature mindset when it comes to your vision, not thinking so grand scale, not being too crazy. That's complacency. But if I'm being honest with myself, that's me not trusting God fully. That's me not trusting God and what he can do. And it's me seeing it and believing it for others or in certain parts of my life, but not thinking that he can do above and beyond my wildest dreams. At least not for me. I'm not trusting him the way that I say that I am. And shame on me, But that's what complacency does. That's how it tricks you. And that's what I want to change. It's like, if you're that scared, if you're feeling that fearful of asking for more or expecting God to do above and beyond what you could imagine, I wonder what it would have happened, like, for real. I think about this sometimes. The example that I related to, like, what would happen had Peter not walked on water? Like, he literally walked out on water based off of his faith. What kind of faith could you have in something that you know is not possible for an ordinary person or you walked on water? Peter said, all right, God, I know you can do anything. I know that above and beyond my wildest dreams, I could have never done this on my own, but you are a God of many things. You are a God of many blessings, of favor. I'm going to step out on faith and I'm going to walk on water. Like, what? And I don't think God can give me a nationally syndicated podcast. I don't think God can allow ears to listen to this podcast from 50,000 miles away. What? Peter walked on water. My dreams don't even compare. The faith that took, stop. So let's get real. Where in your life have you settled? Whether it be career, whether it be relationships, whether it be your lifestyle, what is it that you've settled with? What have you allowed fear or doubt to creep into your mind and make you believe that what God has for you can't happen or isn't possible for you? I truly believe that God has made us to live in abundance. He did not make us to play small. He didn't make us to play overly humble in the name of fear. Be humble, but when you're humble out of fear, that's not being humble. You're playing it small. You're playing it safe, quote unquote. And I don't think that God intended for us to live like that. And I feel like a big part of it is like we're living, I don't know how to explain, where it's like we're within us playing ourselves small because we're scared. We in turn really limit what God is capable of. And we're talking about God. So if you are taking that fear of yours and unintentionally putting it out in the atmosphere that you don't think that God is capable of doing that for you, that's a whole nother loss. I feel like that's a whole nother part of it that you're really setting yourself up for. This is God we talking about. Maybe you've been sitting in the same job for years and you're telling yourself, it's okay. I don't really need to be, in a higher position. I don't really need to climb the corporate ladder. It's okay if I don't get there. This job pays me okay. I can deal with that. Maybe it's your relationships where you've told yourself that this is the best that you're going to get and you deserve to be treated okay. At least it's not horrible the way that I've been treated. It isn't like I'm being disrespected. I might not get everything that I want out of this relationship, but I mean, the bare minimum is something, huh? Instead of feeling like I know that God is a God of abundance, so I know that he intends for me to feel love the way that God loves me. Instead of thinking like that, you're like, well, I mean, it's something. Like, huh? So how do we balance this? How do we stay grateful for what we have, but still know that God is going to do more? I think the key is the intention behind the contentment. Are you genuinely at peace with where you are right now? Or are you just trying to convince yourself that you are? Are you trying to convince yourself that this is all that there is and you're okay with that? Contentment with a growth mindset looks like, God, I'm grateful for today. I'm grateful for all that you've given me and all that I have, but I'm also believing that you have bigger in store for me. And I'm willing to move when you say move. It's like living within the realm of gratitude, but also anticipation, and knowing that you're grateful for what he has for you, but you know that even more is in store. So I'm going to leave you with this thought. Are you actually content with what God has given you? Or have you used realism and realistic visioning as a way to not dream big? Because I promise you, listen to me when I tell you, there is no limit to what God can do for you. There is no limit to his vision for your life. The question is, are you willing to believe that? Are you willing to believe that whatever your wildest dreams are, if it is within God's purpose for you, that it will happen? Are you willing to step outside of that comfort zone, step outside of that complacent mindset and ask for more and work towards more? Contentment doesn't mean that you're not grateful for where you are. It's you being grateful for the journey, but also still keeping your eye on the destination. So reflect this week as you head into the week. Are you just content or are you comfortable? Because when you're comfortable can be a little shaky. Comfortable can be either contentment or complacency. So are you content, friend? Or have you tried to persuade yourself that this is enough for you? So I just want you to lock in. And if you've really thought about this while this episode has been playing, and if the message started something deep down in you, hit me up on Instagram at Her Revision Podcast and let me know where you're challenging yourself to dream bigger, where you're moving, in what area of your life, or have you been playing it a little too safe and you know now that you want more and that you're going to trust God for more. Because we're not just revising all the time. We're writing entirely new chapters. So thank you guys so much for watching. Love you guys so much. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe if you're watching me on YouTube. If you're listening to me on Apple Podcasts or Spotify, rate the podcast. Okay? 5 stars, 5 stars, 5 stars. Love you guys. Until next time. Bye.